I'm Annabelle Hasselbeck. She's Kasey Hudson. We're so excited to be on the show today. We're talking WNBA. We'll get you caught up in all things going on in the W. We're going to recap the women's Wimbledon final and get you some big news in the NWSL. So there's never a shortage of topics here on Respect Her Game. But Kasey, how's your Monday been going?
Monday's good. It was a long weekend of getting my Pilates on.
Okay.
I do that because everyone who hopped on the Pilates train forever ago and they're not being wounded by it now. I am now in the wounded category. So bits and pieces of me are wounded and sore and hurting, but
well, you look toned. You look strong.
See, already? I feel like such. I feel like it's
Pilates is if you do it consistently a ton, it goes by quick and you see it change quickly.
Yeah.
I did the 2-week unlimited classes.
That's what you put me on.
Yes, for Solid Core. And I was like, okay, I got the 2-week unlimited. I'm actually going to use this and get my money's worth. So I literally went 5 days out of those last both weeks.
Yep.
And I was like, I noticed a difference. And then I was out of town for 3 weeks. So I'm like, all right, back to square
Got to
one.
get back in there. Yeah, I'm I feel like I'm walking taller and I feel strong. It's a different kind of strong than weight training, which we're both used to doing as former athletes. But yep, that was my weekend.
It's humbling. I went to the Solid Core across the street from Nesson while I was still an athlete at Boston College. It was during Thanksgiving, I think. I'm all right, I weight train all the time. And I play a Division I sport. I'll be good. I was crying in that class. I'm I'm never coming back.
Bailed.
I'm never doing it.
Bailed. I mean, when she started talking about internal muscles, and I was like, where else do you want me to burn, lady? Everything burns. And it's just, oh my gosh, hollow planks, all these things. So it's good because I think we crave new challenges in our life. And it was a beautiful weekend for the most part. So, I mean, it was Pilates and then rollerblading and then going for a run with my dog.
I meant to ask you, when did the rollerblading start?
Oh my gosh.
I love rollerblading.
Me and my best friend, Nikki, actually, that was our thing. And we would go for straight up 8 miles of rollerblading back home. Hadn't done it in a while because I had a funky wheel and it was time for me to upgrade from my kiddie rollerblades. And I say kid because I can fit in kid size.
The Reeboks.
So it was nice it was time to invest. And I do ice skating. And so my skating coach was oh, get these skates because it helps with translating back onto the ice. So I was here we go, which I can understand why she said that. These aren't very forgiving rollerblades, to say the least. But it was nice because there's a trail that connects all the way back here. So I did the rollerblading, and then by the time that I got back, my dog is a big dog, so I couldn't take her rollerblading with me. I didn't trust either of us.
Absolutely just
I didn't trust us. So I had to take off the rollerblades and then go on a run with her. So it was a very active, fit weekend, one would say.
You're a good dog owner.
Thank you
very
so
kind
much.
Of you to still
sacrifice.
Give her time. But
yes.
Let's get to the W. And I do want to rollerblade with you at some point because I do love rollerblading.
They stay in my car. They stay in my car.
Okay, perfect. Well, let's get to some WNBA. We're still a ways away from the WNBA playoffs, but we're just now hitting the midseason break. Regular season will end September 11th, but there's some very clear ins and some very clear outs because different from the NBA, the WNBA takes the top 8 teams that will qualify for the playoffs, so it's not determined by conference. And right now, the standings are Minnesota Lynx at the top, 2nd, Phoenix Mercury, 3, New York Liberty, 4, Seattle Storm, 5, Atlanta Dream, 6, Indiana Fever, who jumped from 8 to 6 after last night's win against Dallas, 7, Washington Mystics, and number 8, holding on at the last spot, Golden State Valkyries. And each team still has about 22 games left, so a lot of basketball, but the things we know for sure, the Lynx are not going anywhere. This is a team that lost in the final last year, and they are seeking their revenge tour and to get that championship win. And definite outs, most likely it's going to be the Connecticut Sun. They are really struggling. They're 1-11 on the road this year, and Dallas is not much better than that. But it's really this race for spots 6, 7, and 8. Who is it going to be? Going to be very competitive. Like I said, there's 22 games left in the regular season. So just looking at this top list, this top 8 list, who do you think could be a team that might sneaky make this list for you?
I find this list very interesting because a part of me is okay, Kasey, don't try to pull last season into this season. We've talked about it a few times here. Last year, once you kind of hit that midway spot, there was the Olympic break, and we just kind of saw this entire pivot for a number of teams that started kind of making a push for those final spots to get into the mix, and teams that in some categories or to some perspectives had no business making playoffs snuck in there. And we're looking at a different picture now because the Connecticut Sun were one of those teams that people had categorized as a sneaky team to beat out the top or kind of get in one of those upper spots there. Looking at this though, I was talking in the bullpen with the guys and I was like, give me something that's not going to be super obvious here. if the Sky could go on some sort of run, if they can become a little bit more consistent, wouldn't be surprised if we feel any sort of, again, if things change, if those things start, our teams start heating up like we saw last year after the Olympic break, that's a team that can probably get into the mix there. But I'm probably more so looking towards the Aces or the Valkyries. You're talking about two teams that are a little bit closer on that cusp there and probably have more consistency out of their players, not just relying on their superstars, maybe a little bit more consistent depth coming into in the mix. More so depth being a Valkyries thing. And I'm sure we'll unpack that team a little bit further. But yeah, I'm trying not to look so closely to like those teams that are really at the bottom and being like, you guys can sneak in here because it's not really
realistic,
the same thing.
Realism.
Exactly. Realism.
No, I mean, it's real. And yes, there's so much season left to go. And you never know how a team can rebound after an all-star break and really use that time to regroup or really find their identity, right?
Yeah.
Like identity isn't found even in preseason. Like sometimes it takes until you get to playoffs for a team to really rally around a certain phrase or who they think they are as a team. But I think for me, it's going to be the Las Vegas Aces. This is just a team that historically knows how to win. They knows how to do the postseason. And you have one of the most dominant players in the league in A'ja Wilson paired with Jackie Young. So I think, yes, it's going to be an uphill battle for this team because of the competitiveness of those top 8 already. But I think if I'm looking at just that between the Sparks and teams like the Chicago Sky, I think I'm going to go with the Aces. But let's dive a little bit more into the Valkyries because they're on this top list, and this is their inaugural season. So how do you feel like this program is feeling right now?
I mean, I feel like they have to be riding a high. The fact that I'm even talking about them being a sneaky contender just says a lot about how this program, and you and I talked about it, Annabelle. We talked about the fact that we felt like they did a lot of the right moves and brought in a lot of the right pieces. And it's almost like they knew the identity that they wanted this team to have, and they drafted and picked up women accordingly. And I think that their record, I think that their capability of sitting on the cusp kind of speaks for itself. And then you have their head coach that just won Coach of the Month in June. So they're firing on a lot of different cylinders, but I think what's really helping them is that it's the team aspect. And that's something else that we talked about as things were coming together, like everybody kind of having the buy-in to play for each other. And like, there's not this like over mention of superstars. This is a team where like everybody has to not only know their role, but like it's more than next woman up kind of thing. So having that depth and performing very well on the road. You mentioned it. There's a few teams where like they're flopping on the road, and when it comes to championship caliber, when it comes to playoffs, like you got to be able to seal the deal on those road wins. So I think them being really strong on the road and just having so much depth on their bench, like this is a team that can be really, really scary. And I think that they're probably stupid excited because the expectation was like, well, we're brand new. So like whatever happens, but also like we can compete.
Yeah. And hats off to Natalie Nakase, right? For building that roster that you talked about and not having those superstars, which is hard to do in an expansion draft, right? Like because other teams can protect certain players and there is a risk going to a totally new organization, but I think there's power and it's kind of dangerous that they're able to sub in and out without there being a drastic notice change in depth on what's going on. And for that team too, like it takes a level of humility at the same time. Like, hey, we don't have this person who's the face of our organization yet, but it's been cool to see the hometown girl, Veronica Burton, being a star and really doing well for that team as well. But I feel like, say the Valkyries were just going to tank right after this all-star break, I kind of think as an organization they'd still take that as a win because they're like, hey, before the all-star break we came out hot. So I think for me, when you look back at this season, regardless of what happens going forward for the Valkyries, I think it's already a win.
Yeah, I think it's already been a surprise regardless because we didn't, and then actually you make a great point to mention, like they didn't try to build around a face of the organization. They didn't create a face and go from there. So more importantly, it's not like you had to use these, I don't want to call it tactics because you don't want to dismiss superstars. They earned that name for a reason. But like, you know, they didn't have to do any of these tactics for them to be mentioned or for them to be considered or for them to kind of be a little feared, seeing as how like, hey, this team can surprise you. Like we actually have to strategize against these women. So I think that more importantly, the fact that like they didn't have to do too much. It's 6 by our marketing ideas. They did just enough and built off of it. And I think it's going to be a win regardless. But then also like, you got Natalie Nakase, who like first time head coach. Like I would also feel really inspired to think like, hey, I'm coaching a team that matters and this is my first go at it. Like we know the accolades and we know her resume as its own speaks for itself. But outside of that, she was able to translate it as a coach, which isn't always the easiest thing. Like, there's a number of coaches in the WNBA where it's just like, God, if this team had a different coach, we'd be talking about, a completely different record or reputation, Dallas Wings being one of them. So it's really cool to think that, like, there's so many firsts here that are really going right.
Definitely. And even, like, cross sports, too. We looked at what happened with the New England Patriots, right? And we were saying, first-time head coach. Like, okay, bring in more of a coach that's tenured and has had serious success in his past. And that's what's so awesome about Natalie Nakase. She is the first-year head coach for this organization. And I think what's cool about just the Valkyries' success so far, obviously, we're not even barely halfway through or at halfway through, but all these other WNBA teams who are going to be in this expansion plan, they have this new standard. Like, look at what the Valkyries have done. They're in the top 8 right now before even the All-Star break. So I think that leaves some more competition, and it just raises Natalie Nakase and the value that she really has brought to this organization. But let's get to the Fever versus the Dallas Wings game, because this was a hugely anticipated matchup. It was number 1 overall pick, Caitlin Clark, versus this year's number 1 overall pick, Paige Beckers, in this big matchup. And the Fever ended up winning 103-83. Clark had 14 points, 13 assists, and limited turnovers, which she was really talking about needing to clean up. So it's cool to see her be able to take her game to the next level in that way. Kelsey Mitchell led Indiana with 20 points, and the Fever had 64 first-half points, which is the most by any team scored in a half this season, which is wild. 64 points in one half. I mean, I'm like looking at that, I'm like, that can't be right. I can't have that stat right, but it is true. And even though they lost Paige Beckers and Isaiah James combined for 51 points and just weren't able to carry the team through to this win. So let's hear from Caitlin Clark after the game why she felt like she didn't need to make too many shots.
I mean, I still probably didn't shoot it as good as I would have liked, but I feel like it's coming. I'm just trying to continue to get my legs under me. And like I said pregame, like I feel like I'm a couple shots away from like having a really good game. So, but I mean, I thought my playmaking was really good. There was no reason for me to really shoot that much. I thought, like, you look at the box, like 12 shot attempts, 11, 9, 9, 8, 7, 6, like just very balanced. And, people executed. And when we have, 5 people in double figures, like, I feel like we're going to be pretty hard to beat. Like, it would take a lot for a team to beat us. And I think we were just kind of firing on all cylinders, moving the ball well, getting to the next action, played out a pick and roll well. And then our defense was good and got us a lot of buckets in transition.
I gotta wonder what it's like to be shooting like Caitlin Clark, just throwing up deep threes and being, okay, which one is gonna be the one to set me off? Which one is it gonna be? Because that's how she really feels right now. She's definitely upset that it isn't falling for her, and some people are saying, oh, this is her slump. But she's like, no, it's coming. And if, maybe if I was even 4 shots different, this would look like a very different situation.
Yeah, well, her talking about limiting shots, too. I mean, every athlete has their thing, right? And you could probably tell me about your experience. I know for me personally, intuition was always a thing. I was very intuitive. Like, I could feel if my body was in sync with what I needed it to do so that I wasn't overthinking everything that was taking place. So, like, sometimes when you overdo it, when you take too many shots, you start screwing with your form. You start screwing with things that naturally just give you that intuitive, this is my go-to, I know how to land it. So right now she's kind of got a little bit of a mental tango to do, but to already have dealt with 2 injuries this season, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, she might be back, but you really have to be honest with the assumption of, like, does she feel 100% like herself? And is that why she can't force certain things or overdo it or just try to do too many shots? Like, I think she just has to get back to what feels right. When it feels right, I think the shots will land.
I love that you said that because it's got to come naturally for her. And I think for me as an athlete, anytime I fell out of a groove or my shot was too manufactured and it didn't feel natural, I had to go back to doing a million layups just off of transition or in unconventional situations. And I feel like for Caitlin, moments when we've seen her thrive is when she takes a deep 3 in transition. Like, she's almost so unset that she's shooting off of 1 foot. And you're like,
because you don't have time to overthink it.
Totally, 100%. So I love that you bring that up because I think what we're going to see from Caitlin Clark when she kind of gets out of that slump that some people are calling it, and, compared to other players, definitely not a slump. But for her, probably not one of her best shooting performances that she's had in, obviously, the inconsistency. Never really in her college career did she have the serious injuries where she's on and off the court as as much as she's been this season. So that definitely plays a factor. And even Stephanie White, head coach of the Fever, has mentioned that to be a factor. But I definitely think, like you said, it's going to come in those more natural situations. But let's hear from Caitlin and what she had to say about how her defensive efforts have actually helped the Fever.
Caitlin, we talked so much about your offense and playmaking and shot making, but defensively, tied your career out with 5 steals tonight. Ooh. How do you think that first one, though, I think it might have been on page, but just come across court, you get it, and how do you think that set the tone for the rest of the defense throughout the game?
Yeah, well, I knew my team was ready and trap beat on the sideline, so kind of just made a read. I saw she was going to throw it to her post player and was able to get my hand on it and then got a few deflections out of guard-to-guard switches. So I think just being active, like, I can be a really good defender when I choose to and when I work really hard on it and not conserve energy. So I'm proud of myself in that regard. And, I think that probably motivates our offense. Like when I bring a tenacity on the defensive end, I think it really helps our offense go. And, yeah.
I mean, if you had an Aaliyah Boston next to you during your presser, I mean, you kind of have an AB next to you already on the Spectre game.
I feel like we gas each other up just
you do
enough.
have it, but I just love her commentary because we show a lot of Caitlin Clip post-game pressers, and I just love Aaliyah Boston when she's not talking. She's such an active listener. Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. Like, she gives it to her. So I absolutely love that, but it is so important for Caitlin Clark to not only have the defensive performances, like having steals and just being aggressive that she has, but to know it and to be aware of it, because then she's able to say, hey, maybe I am slacking off, maybe I am conserving energy because I know the impact and the value that I bring to my team offensively. But she knows even if she's not getting a steal, her body language and how she presents herself on defense is elevating her team to know, oh, that's my best player fighting for me defensively. Like, I'm going to go do the same for her on this side of the court.
Oh my gosh, I think it's tremendous. And I love that you mentioned the body language. Funny enough, I think Ante and I kind of talked about this on Hold My Banner. You've got players that have an offensive expectancy about them, right? Like, you need them putting up 20 plus points per game. Sometimes it's not working. When that's not working for them, you're just kind of seeing either a lackluster player or somebody who you can see mentally trying to process or overcome what they're dealing with in that moment versus being like, how else can I help my team? So the fact that she was so unselfish enough to just pivot and say, how else can I help my team? All right, fire off defensively. Not to mention is that she's still firing off in the assist column. Setting up your teammates, and at least it's a motto that a number of girls I played with live by, the setup is almost just as important as the execution, because if you know somebody else has the capability to execute, you get them the ball. You make sure that you're positioning them and your teammates in the most progressive, positive situation possible. So to show up defensively, still be loading up in that assist column, you have somebody who, when they're frustrated with themselves and their performance, they don't just tap out. And it's a very hard thing to do. I don't want to speak for any athlete. You're going through so many different mental hurdles in one moment. You only have this one game to make an impact because then it's turn the page on to the next. So for her to do that, I think speaks to the leadership. But I think that you can see it, that her teammates know that they can rely on her in that aspect. And not to make this a whole Caitlin Clark inflammation, I think that's kind of the DNA of this entire Fever team. When they're incapable in one aspect, they try to make sure they can help in another one.
Yeah, no, that's great, because I think it goes back to what we were saying earlier about how is she going to get back on rhythm shooting wise.
Yeah.
And for me, when I would play lacrosse in college, I knew, hey, I really want to start out my pregame reps with defense, because for some reason it just ignited some level of like aggression.
Because if you feel like you make a good play, doesn't matter what the play is, if you feel like you make a good play, it just fires you up.
It loosens you up. Yeah, yes. It fires you up. It loosens you up. And for me, like, then once I had gotten my like defensive effort out of the way, I was like, okay, now I feel good to really focus in on my offense and what the game plan is offensively and even just shooting. So I totally think that could be a spark for Caitlin Clark in that. But let's hear from head coach Stephanie White on what maintaining the lead after getting it in the second quarter meant to this team.
It was encouraging, certainly, for us to be able to maintain it, to be able to stop some of their runs that they went on. That's encouraging. I think we were outscored in the second half, though. And sometimes it's hard to play with those leads, but those leads are never safe in this league. They just aren't. And so for us, again, our journey is to be able to expand on those leads, right? To be able to continue to keep our foot on the gas, not just kind of being in neutral, right? We want to keep going forward. We want to keep progressing. We want to keep growing in the areas that we need to grow.
What I'm hearing from Coach White is that they're right there. She's like, we are right there. We just need to expand on the lead. We need to stay consistent. And that's what this team really needs to do. And that's just a mentality. Like, they have all the pieces. They know exactly what they need to do. They know how to win. They've also experienced losses very much throughout this season. It's been so up and down for them. So just hearing her say that, I can just feel that, like, tension of, like, we're there, but we're not there. But we know exactly what we need to do.
Yeah. And, like, to know that you have the capability to do better. Like, this is the point of the season and the year where it's like it all matters. Every win matters, and you don't want to feel like it's going to slip from your grasp. You want to feel a little bit more confidence that you've secured it, but they're getting there. Jokingly enough, I think it's not heavily reliant on the Caitlin Clark performance. I think, if anything, her time away from this team in terms of injury, not away, but it's helped everybody else kind of find and solidify their confident identity and their piece in everything. I mean, last year I remember mentioning Kelsey Mitchell's name number of times because, like, of course we were talking about Caitlin Clark, but it was like, dude, look who else is, like, really stepping up or, like, going off or executing on these passes from Caitlin Clark. And you're seeing it go beyond Mitchell. So now it's not just the Caitlin Clark and Kelsey Mitchell show, or even just Aaliyah Boston. Like, you're seeing a number of women that deserve attention and kind of, like, you know, some perks on their name for what's going on. I think that's going to help them be able to string together more consistent wins, but, like, say this playoff spot does get secured by them, it's going to help them be very competitive. So I think that it's a perfect timing to kind of have this, like, all right, let's get all gas here, but they're working out the kinks. Let's say that.
Right. And it takes time, right? Like, they had that time, like you're saying, and now it's time.
Yeah.
Like, you had time to figure out, okay, we know that Caitlin might not be in the game, but who's going to step up?
Yeah.
And it's not just like on your scouting report before the game. It's hey, when we're in these moments and when we can't have a huddle and talk about it, or we don't have pregame to know, like, hey, who's going to do what in certain situations, and emotionally lead as well, right? Like, that comes with consistency, and when you don't have that, you kind of have to look for it. So we'll see who that will be after this break. But let's get to the other side of the court with Paige Beckers, because she had a lot to say after the game. So here's her talking about the environment of playing Caitlin Clark in their first professional matchup.
Yeah, it's fun anytime we can compete against each other. We're two competitors who just want to win and who have grown up to be playing against each other, playing with each other. So it's great, and the environment's great here. I feel like every game is a sellout, and so they have a great home court advantage. So overall, yeah, great environment.
Yeah, those two will never escape each other unless they end up on the same team someday in the WNBA. What would that be like? I mean, that would be nuts. People would be losing their minds.
Yeah, absolutely. You're talking about two forces, absolute forces in the WNBA. I mean, Paige Beckers already.
Crazy.
Yeah.
It would be nuts, and I think people can't even fathom what that would be like. We're like, man, we got enough to cover with Caitlin Clark and the Fever, and then I think, but too, like, if they were on the same team, like, yes, that would be an incredible star-studded team, but it'd be fun. It's more fun, I would say, to have kind of these characters on each team within the WNBA, a league that is really growing rapidly.
Yeah.
And so it's fun for the media to cover it because it's like, oh, we got this, and then we got this, and the storylines just are more energized in that way. But let's hear from the Dallas Wings head coach, Chris Clanis, on how the Fever's physicality really played a role in the Dallas getting knocked off.
Yeah, I think, again, some turnovers and then just their physicality in general got into us and made our lives hard when we're trying to go set screens, pushing us off our paths to be able to even set and use screens. So I thought their physicality really bothered us in stretches and kind of took away our flow and continuity. But then again, no excuse for not getting back. And I just think we could have had greater effort more consistently in transition.
Yeah, that's tough because you never want physicality to be a reason why you struggle, right? Offensively too, especially knowing that you probably knew this going into the game.
Yes.
So I think that's a tough thing to learn from, but it can happen once. It just definitely cannot happen in the second rematch.
Yeah, a little surprising that ended up being something that threw them off their game because, not to be dramatic, but realistically from a headline standpoint, a lot of the conversations around the Indiana Fever, yes, some of the antics were kind of inflated there, but you're hearing a lot about their physicality or their physical response to situations. So if anything, mentally you would think that they would be like, oh, this is a team that can either physically respond or physically, ramp things up and really bring it to us in that sense. So I am kind of like tossed a little bit that I'm like, oh, you didn't game plan for physicality
yeah.
versus a Fever a team that's been in the headlines for, I don't know, physicality. Yeah, so that part was interesting.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Well, they do have another chance to rebound. This team will play the Fever again on August 1st, so sometime before then. But that wraps up our WNBA discussion for today. But when we come back, we'll recap the women's Wimbledon final. So stay tuned for some tennis when we return. Hey, it's tennis time on RHD, and we've got the newest Wimbledon champion, Iga Swiatek, after defeating the last standing American, Amanda Anisimova, in the final. And Swiatek didn't lose a single game in her historic 6-0, 6-0 final. This was the first women's Wimbledon in 114 years where one player couldn't win a single game. She now has 6 Grand Slam titles and has done so on all 3 surfaces, clay, hard, and grass, which we talked a lot about on RHG here last week. So it's kind of cool to see that come to life there. Kasey, I thought of you immediately about that. But here's Swiatek on how the ranking did or really didn't affect her going into this tournament.
Well, honestly, it's not about the rankings. It's about what place you are at the moment, and like my ranking I wasn't number 1 from the beginning of the year. So I for sure I missed that, and I would love it to be differently. But other girls, played amazing tournaments. I didn't play China Swing, so obviously I knew that my ranking is not going to be high, especially when I have so many points to defend on clay. But I would say really, especially here, it didn't really matter because I focused so much on just developing as a player and figuring out how to play better on grass that my mind was busy with that instead of points and rankings.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you.
How will you celebrate this evening?
I don't know.
Not eating pasta and strawberry.
Well, I'm gonna go with something more crazy than pasta and strawberries, but I don't know. I heard I have 2 hours of media, so first I'm gonna focus on that.
Well, I hope she goes with something a little more exciting than pasta and strawberries. But I mean, right then and there, when you have 2 hours of media, you're kind of locked in. You're like, I don't know if I can focus on anything else. But I did love how she just said, hey, my mind was preoccupied by just the surface that I was playing on, and I couldn't focus on the ranking.
Yeah, absolutely. And you really can't, because the reality of it is kind of what we talked about here on RHD beforehand. You might be extremely dominant on clay courts, and depending on how many clay court or big title clay court matches you participate in, that can contribute to your ranking. But if you get so hung up on that, pay attention to the ranking heading into this season. After that, the more titles you get, then it's going to change your ranking. So the most important thing is the next match ahead and the surface that you need to make sure that you're disciplined on. I think I heard her say the word discipline. And something else that stood out in her match with Anisimova was just you have these players that are so composed, and we heard a lot of feedback throughout Wimbledon just about the conditions and how the heat was wilting the grass and how that was changing the speed of things, and powerful hitters were getting knocked out of the rankings. So for her, when you're hearing that all these conditions are kind of wilting, no pun intended, on players' mental, you don't want to fall into that trap. You have a match to do. You need to serve into your biggest assets, your biggest skill set. You need to figure out how you're going to adjust if certain things are not going to go your way because of the conditions that you're hearing about. And I think that is also why she came out on top.
Right. And you can't control that past when it starts, right? Once it starts, yes, it might matter on your seeding and if you can even get into the tournament. Totally, there's a lot of stress there because this is your livelihood. This is your career. But once the tournament starts, all bets are off. You got to focus on how do I win and how do I improve throughout the tournament, which I love that she talked about as well. But here's Amanda Anisimova after the match.
Yeah, I mean, she came out playing very, very well. So all the credit to her, and she was able to really play the game she wanted. I think from my side, I think I was a bit frozen there with my nerves, and maybe the last 2 weeks I got a bit tired or something. But yeah, I mean, she definitely made it difficult for me. So yeah, she's an unbelievable player, as I've said many times, and she deserves this win. Yeah, I mean, it was a bit tough to digest, obviously, especially during and right after. It's not how I would have wanted my first Grand Slam final to go, but I think I was a little bit in shock after as well. But I told myself I'll definitely come out stronger after this. I mean, that's not an easy thing to go through, losing 0-0.
in a Grand Slam final. But if anything, I can look at it as a positive and something that I can look at as motivation going forward. And obviously, there's a lot of things I need to do to progress.
It's very rare, I feel like, that we hear professional athletes say I had nerves or I froze. And so I was a little in shock just hearing that initially. Like, yes, people had been talking about that's the reason that she did crumble and wasn't able to win a game. But for her to come out and say that is really strong and vulnerable. You do have to do it, I feel like, in that position with how the outcome ended up being. But I thought it was really impressive that she was even able just to say that.
Yeah, well, I think it's impressive for a number of reasons, but one to focus on is the fact that she just came back from a mental health break, you know? And the last thing that you want to do is put too much expectation on yourself. So I can imagine what her battle was like of just kind of trying to stay even keel. You're going to your first Grand Slam title. I'm sure that wasn't particularly in view, but it wasn't taken off the table. Then you get there and, like, the last thing is being shut out of any sort of match, not being able to have any sort of response. And something else that was a heavy conversation around Wimbledon this previous year was like the best matches were because of the best responders. Taylor Fritz, for instance, like he had so many great responses versus Valkryies that for a minute there, you're like, holy crap, can he keep this interesting? Can he maybe take over this match? So her inability to respond is something that's obviously going to weigh heavy on her, but how she weathers that storm mentally after coming from a mental health break, I think speaks heavily to her even being able to put that into perspective and take responsibility for being frozen and all of the things that she said in that, because I mean, you and I have seen some crazy interviews from tennis people where she could have got up there and just been like, not my best match, and just shut up.
Totally. No, and a lot of people have different responses in those hard moments. And I think what's unique to Anisimova is, like you said, the mental health challenges that she actually stepped away from tennis in 2023 after, making that decision. But she used that time to do something really cool. She made artwork and she gave the proceeds to mental health charities, which I thought was awesome. But having just overcome recent adversity in her life, it's like she knows exactly how to go through things that are just, beyond your comprehension. She probably never could have dreamed in her wildest dreams that this final would have gone that way. And she probably never could have dreamed, other hard things that she's walked through in her life. So yes, some athletes are able to respond quicker than others in certain ways in game. And unfortunately for her, it just didn't go her way. But I really do feel like because of what we've seen her do throughout her life and throughout her career so far and just getting to that game, we'll be able to see this player come back on top. But someone who had a really funny response after one of her tournaments, after her match, is Sabalenka. So let's hear what she had to say.
No.
Good afternoon.
You're not gonna see Roland Garros press conference, so anyone who was waiting for that, you can leave right now. Okay. Yeah, I mean, she was a better player.
Hey, I love the smiles in a tough moment like that, because that's not always the response that we've seen from this specific player. So I think it's awesome. I think it's great learning, and it's not always going to be like that, right? But I think in hard moments like that, when you work for something that's your dream, and she talked about it in that press conference, like, I was working towards my dream. You get closer. Being able to laugh about it is awesome, because you're going to have months and years and the rest of your life to think about how that went.
Yeah, and then it's also kind of like a wayward way to take responsibility for the post-Coco situation that she was in, to just kind of try to make light of it. She did take to social media to apologize. I know that it's more of a reputable thing of her just kind of having these tough press conferences, but she's another tennis player, an amazing journey. And there was a documentary on the fact of like how close she is with her dad, and her dad passed away. So like every match for her, I think, runs really deep in terms of like approval and like trying to match his success. I think actually he was a hockey player, if I'm not mistaken. So like she has this other internal conflict going on to just kind of connect with somebody who's no longer here. But most people around her, other documentaries talk about how bubbly she is outside of her competitiveness. So it is fun to see that.
This is the first glimpse of bubbly I've seen from her, but her competitiveness really
her
shines
competitive
through.
is on the forefront always, but I think there's a little bit more jazz in there.
Definitely. I like seeing that. I saw it. But what else, other things that we saw at Wimbledon was royalty. Princess Kate Middleton made an appearance. So here is a clip of her standing ovation that she received. That was so loud I could hear blanging through
I almost had to like turn
earbuds.
down my earpiece.
I love it. My mother loves the royal family, like loves following it. She loves mainly Princess Kate or Kate Middleton now. And so had to get that in there for her watching the show today. But I think it's such a cool tradition in part of tennis.
Oh my God, it's one of my favorites. And funny, both of our moms actually, my mom was born in Trinidad, so they were under English rule forever. So yes, everything is through the monarchy and celebration of the monarchy. Yeah, we actually, most of the women in my family carry the middle name Elizabeth in honor of Queen Elizabeth.
This is wild, Kasey.
I know. There's
I
always some
learned
random.
something new about Kasey today. I got rollerblading and the ties to the English family, royal family, royalty.
The love for the royal family.
The love for the royal family.
Which can go back and forth for some people, but we won't get into that. With that said, though, Kate Middleton, my family is a huge fan of them. When I went to England a couple years ago, I brought my mom back so much like memorabilia and stuff, but to see her there, and she looks amazing. I remember, I think it was just last year, right before Wimbledon, that they were talking about her cancer prognosis, and nobody knew why we weren't seeing her around much and stuff. And then we found out she was going through this battle and all of these things. So for her to be out there and just to look so great, I think that that's just another layer to it on top of like, you love this moment with the royal family.
Definitely. People definitely wanted to use that as an opportunity to honor her after going through her fight with cancer. So that was really special and fun to see. But congrats to the men's winner of Wimbledon Center as well. But when we come back, we've got some big news in the NWSL and women's national soccer team. Tobin Heath retiring, so we'll catch you up on all those things with her retirement after the break. All right, well, we haven't even processed Alex Morgan's retirement yet, and we're already having to process Tobin Heath's. I feel like this post is a very great indicator of not just how we feel, but how a lot of soccer fans hear after hearing the news of Tobin Heath's retirement. Last week, U.S. women's soccer legend, two-time World Cup champion Tobin Heath renounced her retirement on The Recap Show, which is her podcast with Kristen Press that she co-hosts alongside of her. So here was the start of the podcast and how they opened up this announcement.
Tobin, Tobin, Tobin.
Tobin. Tobes.
Tobin.
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 Hey, Tobin.
Tobin.
Tobin Heath.
Hey, it's me. Okay, let's see if I make it through.
Take number 978. I keep getting emotional.
Dear Tobes.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Congratulations for an amazing career.
As a player, you were magical.
I don't even know Tobin Heath personally, but I was getting emotional during that. What did you think about these handwritten letters?
Oh my gosh, I thought that was such a fantastic touch. They always talk about how personal handwritten letters are, so to be able to make it, to modernize it, that's what I'm trying to say, in that way, in like that announcement form, I'm like, how special is that? But wow. Yeah, I think I'm right there with the fans. Still processing Alex Morgan. Now you're talking about Tobin Heath, and you're also talking about somebody who was a part of a World Cup team that just kind of was so. I don't know how to describe it.
To say the least.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was like, I wish that there was a bigger word for it, but yeah, very much a part of like multiple iconic World Cup teams.
I think people were even calling it like the golden era, and obviously hopefully we have another golden era with the U.S. women's national team and to see success like they've had in the past. But it is just really crazy to me to feel like this is like the time that we're in. And yes, I think that her career slowly took a turn to retirement after her knee injury a couple years ago. But it's just really cool to see those handwritten letters because it kind of convicted me too. I'm like, shoot, I gotta get on the handwritten notes for people. This is so sweet and so genuine, and I love seeing all those former teammates in there as well. But here's a really special former teammate, Abby Wambach, and what she had to say to Tobin.
Here we have a stack of letters from people that were on this journey with you. This is from Abby. You are someone I found to truly love soccer, much more than I ever could. Another thing to spark my envy. I also loved how big you smiled when things worked out and you placed the ball exactly where you wanted it to be. It often felt like a work of art when the ball was at your feet. I tried really hard to get into your headspace, at least your assumed headspace, to maybe try and connect in a deeper dimension of existence. Because honestly, I think that's where you went when you played. You went somewhere else, but were capable of being completely present. Maybe that's what presence is. I don't know. But where you went, I wanted to go.
I mean, that's amazing.
From one of the best players in the world.
Okay, two things. Did you notice the sofa they were sitting on? It was all jean. It was all denim.
Oh, I didn't even
I
notice
had to go
that.
back and watch it twice, so go back
Because
later.
I'm over here with like foggy eyes.
I know it is emotional, but I'm like, wait, I like am so into this interview right now and this podcast. I'm like, the setup is kind of sick. It's like an all jean couch.
That's
So you
sick.
have to go see it. But I loved how she said, "This is Abby." It's like we don't even need to tell you who Abby is. You know
Right.
exactly who Abby is. So I thought that was just added to the ballerness of this interview.
I love how she described the work of art, because what I remember from her career was just the fact that like she could dribble past anybody. It was just like you didn't fear what the lineup was, especially back to like World Cup stuff. Like it didn't matter who Germany had on their team or who Brazil had on their team, because it was like, no, she can dribble through freaking anybody. So to put it as a work of art and the ball placement, I mean, hell, you're gonna have all the confidence on your shoulders once you make it through a number of like all stars that you're competing against. And I had an extra layer of love for her too, because Arsenal's one of my favorite teams growing up, and she played for the women's Arsenal team before her career came to an end through injury. For the most part, because she tried to bounce back after that, but her contract wasn't renewed. So very special.
Very special. And I just loved how Abby Wambach talked about like the art that she's, because when a really good player plays creatively, it does look like a piece of artwork.
Yeah.
And it does feel beautiful
It's
to watch the game of
mesmerizing.
soccer. I remember I got to watch the U.S. women's soccer team come. They were in Nashville, Tennessee, just playing like the random game.
Oh, a friendly
and I had
maybe?
and I had nosebleed seats in Nissan Stadium, and it was just beautiful to watch them pass and to watch her specifically play. It was just so entertaining and fun. And I mean, she's been a baller even since college. I think she won 3 national championships with the Tar Heels. So
Yep, she
pretty
went where every
incredible,
woman
and
wanted to
just
go.
totally, she knew exactly where to go. But just to list off some of her accolades: 13 years with the senior women's national team, 2 World Cups, 3 Olympic medals. 2 of those were gold, in the 2016 U.S. Soccer Athlete of the Year. One of her biggest moments was scoring in the 2015 World Cup against Japan, which was such a fun moment. I remember watching that, jumping up and down on my couch and during the summer. And she also won in the inaugural NWSL trophy in 2013 with Portland. So really cool to just see her career not only be capped by U.S. women's soccer, but also the NWSL and what she's done there. So I just love that, and kind of crazy that she is retiring. I didn't really see any trickles of this throughout the news. It kind of seemed like they did have a really great build up to this on the media side, at least.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that anything kind of was hinting to it. Like I said, more so, or I think you mentioned it moments ago, it's kind of hard because at one point, like injuries in your body, they're going to kind of speak for themselves. And I think she's also just entering a new era in her life, kind of like Alex Morgan is. Like, she's just ready to focus on being a mom, and hopefully we'll see her on the coaching side of something. That's full speculation, but I would love to see Alex Morgan as a coach. But for Tobin, I think that for her too, it's just like now it's time to just kind of focus on not having that athletic, ready, go body, but just kind of like being present, like Abby said, in a different way now.
Mm-hmm. And we've seen a lot of these former U.S. women's soccer players start a podcast, like Tobin has, or just have a media presence. But is there one women's soccer player from the U.S., maybe golden era, who you feel like, man, they don't really have a presence in the podcast space right now, but that you would love to see them there?
Oh, she wouldn't represent U.S., but hands down, I would want Sydney Leroux to start a podcast.
So good.
I want to hear from her all the time, because I think it's something she's actually trying to do now. And over the past couple of years of her career right now, she's on a mental health break. She's got 2 kids, and she's focusing forward, and she was married to a previous Premier League player that ended up in the MLS as well. So she's just got so many intricate perspectives. Canadian, so not too far away, but she leads with humor, but she has gone through a lot of adversity to where I feel like she can just speak to so many different things, and it would just be, I mean, you'd want to consume that podcast in a heartbeat.
That's so good. That's a great pick. So let's put her on a podcast with my girl who I loved growing up, Julie Ertz,
Ooh.
married to Zach Ertz
I
of the
love her
Washington
too.
Commanders. It could be a great little pairing.
Yep.
I loved her blue pre-wrap. I thought she was so sick, just being that defense for the U.S. women's national team. Like we were always talking about Alex Morgan, but I loved seeing her occasionally she wasn't always on the screen, and then she popped up, I'm like, I really like that girl. So those are my childhood memories of her, but I think that'd be
we
a
could
really
throw
cool.
Mal Pugh in the mix too.
Yep, there we go. That would be
She's still
baller.
very early in her career, but she's starting motherhood and all these things, but she'd be another one. I mean, she's been a baller since like baby.
Oh my gosh, so young.
Yeah.
And I remember my little sister, Mallory, was so pumped to see someone who shared her same name on the women's soccer team.
Yeah.
She was freaking out. She's like, that's my girl. That's my girl. I'm like, you don't know each other, but sure.
We're friends anyway.
We're friends anyway. But no, I love that. And I think it's important too for some of these players during that golden era to get in the podcast space and in the media space to not only just have something new for their own personal and professional life, but to really speak into their experience because they had such an incredible run.
Yeah.
Like, I want to hear everything about that experience, and I want to hear everything about what it took to win.
Oh, big time. And I love that you kind of mentioned that because to think, like, the advice that the golden era gals could give, like, the NWSL is growing. And there was a lot of adversity that these golden era players had to go through to even be considered or be taken seriously as women's soccer players and be considered ballers. And those World Cups that they won, like, that was really just like they started to bring in fans that would only watch the men's side in a number of ways. So kind of their carve out in this world and in this sport, I would just love to hear it from an unfiltered perspective.
Definitely. Well, I'm excited. We'll see. And more NWSL and soccer talk coming up as we focus in on what's going on here in Boston. So stay tuned when we come back for more soccer. Hey, welcome back to Respect Her Game. Usually this is our Girl on Fire show where Kasey and I each pick a girl that's really thriving right now, but we both have the same one. We both decided it is the Boston Legacy because they've got big news with Aaliyah Boston of the Indiana Fever becoming an investor in the Boston Legacy, which is so cool to hear because she's playing in Indiana. So it's so cool to see how she is pouring back into a place where she grew up and played basketball, actually ended my high school basketball career and two playoff runs in a row at Worcester Academy while I was at the Rivers School. So awesome to see just her leadership too for this city and for her to just be able to pour back into professional women's sports here in Boston.
I think what's really cool and something that I'm learning, what am I at, 6 months in Boston now, is how quickly Boston just kind of like gets injected into the veins of somebody here. I mean, to think that she was just here for academy. She wasn't even born in the States. And it meant so much to her, even with her professional career starting elsewhere, to circle back to Boston and be a part of something that's revamping itself. It's kind of getting a new identity, and the way that they're going about that is to have so many different minds come to the table. So to have Aaliyah Boston, who is a professional in her own sense, and clearly Boston made an impact on her, I think it's pretty sick.
It's pretty sick, and now just while you were talking, it made me think, man, we're talking about all these WNBA expansion teams. We're also seeing rumors of Connecticut maybe making a switch.
Oh, yeah.
So I know it was Providence. That was the name that was getting thrown out there for a different relocation for the Connecticut Sun. But, hey, in the event that there becomes a WNBA team in Boston, I'm pretty sure we know where Aaliyah Boston wants to be and wants to pour into what city.
Oh my gosh, look what you just set in motion,
Hey, I
AB.
don't know.
That could be a thing.
Clip it.
And I think AB can convince AB to come
Maybe,
play
I don't know.
in
That'd
Boston.
be pretty sick. But I do want to see her win a championship in Indiana first. I
Yeah.
think that would, like, for me, I'd love that as like a supporter of Leah Boston and a cheerleader for her. I think that'd
That's
be
a good
cool. And
point.
then take that winning experience and bring it here.
Oh,
Boston, to
that's
the new team.
perfect, because whenever you have a team that's going through so much, and of course with this team being sold and moving around and all these things going on, what's the first thing that they talk about when they start bringing in certain players? Championship caliber, championship experience, because they don't want that journey to be too long and excruciating. And for everything that the Sun has already been through over these past couple of seasons, between coaching adversity and, like, you know, being a competitive team to now sitting bottom of the charts this year. But I think all of this conversation probably is impacting in itself. Like, she's the perfect piece to pull over for morale.
She is. So, hey, we'll see. That's good. That might take a few years, but we know it isn't going, well, actually, the construction will probably take a few years, but we already know it. Just recently, the Legacy announced their new training grounds for the new Boston team, which is so awesome just to see them investing in a facility for this new team, because a lot of, you know, women's professional sports teams share facilities with maybe even some colleges. So it's just cool to see that, yes, there's a lot of ways to go, but so exciting. And when this news broke, you actually told it to me that they were going to build a new facility in Brockton, Mass, which is really awesome. So excited for that new facility.
Yeah, it's cool that you mentioned that too, because funny enough, when this news broke and we were actually talking about like, hey, are the Sun actually going to come here? Is there a big difference between the Sun going to Boston or going to Providence? Providence being the most recent rumor going down, but it was more so like spacing. You know, it's great to have all these new teams, but where's the investment going to lie? And then the announcement for the Legacy getting this spot pops up. So we're like, okay, the commitment is there. The investment opportunities are there, because even if the Connecticut Sun ended up coming to Boston, it's like, okay, where are they going to share space? You already have TD Garden that's got a lot of scheduling going on. You have the Boston Fleet right now that are playing between BU and Lowell.
Yes, Lowell.
Oh, Lowell. I was told how to properly say it, and I still failed.
When I first got to Boston, I pronounced every single town wrong, and thankfully I was on a lacrosse team with girls from every single town in Boston, so I had to get it right.
So you got to hear it all the time. But outside of me butchering Lowell, Brockton, Mass right here, this is kind of an example of what the training facility is expected to be looking like. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I was hearing something as early as 2026, which is just right around the corner.
Yeah, well, I think what's also cool about this is just, yes, you're going to build a new facility for the pro team, but then think about the opportunities that gives for camps and to have youth tournaments there, and just for young girls in the Boston area who love soccer and play soccer.
Such a good point.
To have a literal visual representation of, hey, I could be here someday playing for this team and be a professional athlete in the city of Boston, the city of champions. Like, it is so cool. So super excited that news came out right before we jumped on the show. We were able to talk about it, but always love talking WNBA. Well, we did tennis today and some soccer news. So never a shortage of topics here with you, Kasey. But thanks so much for tuning in to Respect Your Game. We'll see you next week.